Strength is a cure. I have to preface that statement by first saying the fact that strength is not the cure. It's a cure, or one of many combinations of cures. It has great potential, but more is needed than just strength. Getting to the heart of it all, strength is needed for not just the physical demands of life, but also mental and emotional as well. Strength can take many different shapes, forms, endurance, resiliency, fortitude, etc. My goal for this podcast is to try and explore all the possible forms of strength and all the possible ways that we can increase our strength. To get started, let's go to the beginning. I was diagnosed with leukemia on December 11th of 2020. I had a bone marrow biopsy done that day, and a week later, I was specifically diagnosed with chronic myelomonocytic leukemia, or CMML for short. CMML is a type of cancer that starts in the blood-forming cells of the bone marrow and it invades the blood. Leukemia literally means white blood. For comparison, normal white blood cell count should be between 4,800 and 10,800. Mine was over 190,000. Even as high as that number was, it was a pure fluke that I even went to the doctor to begin with. I'm a man. I'm a very hard-headed man. Looking back, there were signs. Lots of signs. Lots of bright neon signs. But, like most men, you probably know, I thought I could power through it and keep going. COVID had hit my personal training business pretty hard, and I was working a second job. I was scared for my family's financial future, so I thought I needed to work more and more. My spleen was hurting all the time, but I attributed that to just maybe a pulled ab muscle. I was training, working out, whatever. I started to have more frequent nosebleeds, but I thought that was just from the summer heat. And I was getting more and more fatigued. But working two very physical jobs can do that, I thought. None of that registered though, because I kept looking at excuses. I just thought it was stress and kept hammering away at it. The kicker was a growth on my Adam's apple. I had a pretty substantial lump that had developed and it stood out. So finally, at the urging of my mom and wife, I called my doctor. My doc orders some blood work, comes back, and that's when we saw that my white blood cell count was so high. Coming to find out later, the growth on my throat was a benign cyst that went away on its own. But had it not been for that red herring, who knows how bad a shape I would have been in before finally getting checked out. Prior to cancer, the worst related health issue I'd had was a hernia repair. I won't lie, that was brutal compared to most things. You don't realize just how much work your abs do until you can't use them for a week. My recovery from that took about a month before I was back to full strength. Cancer was a whole new animal by comparison. With my hernia recovery, I knew I was going to recover. I knew the timeline. With cancer, I didn't have any expectations, and the doctors weren't really sure either. Not that they didn't know what they were doing or what was happening, but trying to pin down numbers is highly unrealistic when every case is so drastically different. When we hear the big C word, we instantly think of death. And I did. Laying there after my bone marrow biopsy, I couldn't help but start to Google leukemia. And I tried to stay away from anything but reliable sources. However, the internet is a dark and dangerous rabbit hole. My searches didn't really turn up anything all that comforting while I lay there recovering from having my hip hammered into. This was my first foray into the dark mental side of cancer. I didn't cry at first. That came later, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I've cried many times in my dealings with all this. It sucks. Anybody who's ever dealt with similar prognosis would tell you the same thing. It leaves a mark on your mind. And to be honest, I had no idea what I was in for. while I have a better idea what's happening now, there are still days that I struggle to comprehend it all. There's just a lot of information to take in every single time you go to the doctor's office. And I still go once or twice a week. At the end of the day, I was going to need a lot of strength. I started to recognize that fact, although I wasn't very sure where I was going to get it from. A very good friend helped to put it in perspective for me when he said that I'd been investing my strength into my body and my mind over the past 30 years. That's how long I've been strength training. Unknowingly, I had been doing something to prepare myself for the task that come. We all hope that the work we put in goes into something more constructive than fighting illness, but I really can't think of any more noble use for that strength than to be able to come back from a life-threatening disease.